go through the CBC in detail, and I'll try to make it quick. And then in the future, we're going to do part two of this, where we're going to go through the metabolic panel, because that's the other part of the standard blood work that people get. And then we'll go over cholesterol as well. And at the end of this presentation, I'm going to make a point about some interesting tests that tell you more and probably some of what you're really looking for that would tie into your energy, your sleep, your hormones, your skin, and how you go through day to day feeling good or not good.
Yeah, awesome.
Okay, so we're going to go through this sort of in order in the way that the CBC results are normally presented to you. Usually, the top of the list, first off, is your white blood cells. And so this shows you how your body is responding to infection and also inflammation. And so your white blood cells, this is like your army, like the total size of your army. You can have a small army, you can have a large army. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's perfectly functional, but this is just an overview. Your white blood cells are made in the bone marrow, and then different specific types of white blood cells get matured in different parts of the body, like in the spleen or in the thymus or out in the peripheral tissues. Okay. Um, so beyond that, then we have your red blood cells. Your red blood cells are essential for carrying oxygen through the blood. If you don't have very many red blood cells, you're going to be called anemic. But there are different types of anemia, and they refer to different kinds of deficiencies in the body. So you want to have your red blood cells in a normal range. And again, these are made in the bone marrow as well. The red blood cells live for about 120 days, but for some people, depending if you've got some kind of unusual process going on, like if you have some inflammatory condition going on, your red blood cells may die off more quickly or they may last longer. So your red blood cells, this is what your A1C test is based off of, an assumption that your red blood cells last 120 days. But maybe they don't. And then the purpose of the spleen is to help filter and recycle your old or damaged red blood cells. Now, this is important because your hemoglobin is the part of the red blood cell that's carrying the oxygen, and it needs iron. Your body needs iron in order to produce your hemoglobin. It also needs vitamin A, and it needs other nutritional cofactors. So, but we like to pay attention to your hemoglobin because if it's low, and I would say if it's low below 13, then you're probably not enjoying cardiovascular exercise very much. So the MDs are not going to call attention to it probably until your hemoglobin gets down into the 11s. But ideally, you really want it um, somewhere between maybe 13.8 to 15 would be ideal. Not too little, not too much. So sometimes we can kind of get thrown off when our blood work is high, like if your hemoglobin and hematocrit, the next one, are high, just if you're dehydrated. And that just means that your red blood cells are kind of dense because there's not a lot of fluid. You don't have enough water in your system to dilute it. So when we see numbers that are out of line on the blood work, really it's kind of like an icebreaker. It really just makes me ask questions. Do you think you were really dehydrated that day, or were you drinking lots of water the night before your blood work and lots of water all morning before you went in? Or, did you not do that? Did you not follow instructions and were you just drinking black coffee all morning because you knew that was allowed too? Like
Well,
that's dehydrated.
well, right, and also too, right? Don't we also then that's also a mineral problem too, somewhere along that lines too. If you're not holding water and things like that, that could be another issue. So we're using this, like you said, it's really investigative. It's just giving us more information to where we can dive deeper down there and kind of ask more questions to kind of understand. Because
Mm-hmm.
minerals help hold water in the cells. And so if we
Right.
have high doses of minerals, or if they're stressed out or run down, they're going to burn through those minerals quickly. So
True.
That could be another
And
reason.
so I mentioned hematocrit a second ago. That refers to how much space the red blood cells are taking up in the blood. It's expressed as a percentage of the volume of red blood cells within a known volume of the centrifuge blood that they're looking at. So we look at these things kind of in combination. If you've got one number that's out of line, probably not a big deal. But if you have several in the group out of line, then we really want to ask questions and get an explanation for it, right? How often do you get an explanation of anything in your labs when you go to the doctor? Okay, so this slide, these numbers that start with M, the MCV is mean corpuscular volume. That is the measurement of the volume of an average single red blood cell. MCH is the mean corpuscular hemoglobin, and that is the average weight of the hemoglobin per red blood cell. And the mean corpuscular hemoglobin concentration, the MCHC, that measures the average concentration of hemoglobin in the red blood cell. So I know that's hard to follow. It's really not important unless it looks like you have anemia. And so if we're trying to figure out like what kind of anemia you have, then we go to our handy dandy references, which I have right here next to my desk. And so like if you have certain patterns where some of these things are high and low, there's no way we can memorize all this stuff, but we go back to our references and then we see, does this look like a vitamin B12 deficiency? Is it maybe a B6 deficiency? Is it purely iron? Or could we have an anemia of copper? And is there also maybe a higher need for vitamin C? So we can tell those things from these numbers when something is high or low, not just one, but a whole pattern. That's where the importance is. Oh, and then I skipped this last one here, RDW. That is an indication of the degree of abnormal variation in size of the red blood cell. So again, doesn't really matter unless you have anemia, and then it helps us get more specific. Okay, so the next number in your list, if you're following along with the last set of labs that you got, platelets. So these are involved in blood clotting. They are the smallest of the formed elements in the blood. They support vascular integrity and vasoconstriction. So that's the ability of your arteries to kind of tighten up at times when you need higher blood pressure. When would that be? Like when you're exercising, when you're running, when you're scared, you need your blood circulating as fast as possible. So you're going to get some tighter arteries. The platelets come into play to form adhesions whenever that's necessary. So if you get a cut, the platelets are involved in the clotting of the blood and then the sealing up and forming of the internal scab and external. So they're all about stitching together tissue and stopping bleeding. 2/3 of all of your platelets are in the circulating blood, floating around all the time, and then the remaining third is just living in the spleen. Okay, so with all of those, basically we're kind of looking at the health of your bone marrow and then whether or not you have anemia. Now we can look at the immune markers. Okay, so I've got two different slides here. One is looking at the relative differential. That's like, they counted the numbers of these individual pieces and then they compared that to the total. So the relative, we have reference ranges for that. And then the next slide is the absolute differential. This slide is like where they're counting the actual numbers of these cells that they see. And we have ratios for this one too. So let me just go back to this slide. I don't want to be confusing, but it's a lot of information. So first, let me just say, these are individual pieces of your white blood cells. So I said before that you have an army. And within that army, you've got different cells that serve different purposes. You've got your tank drivers, and you've got your foot soldiers, and you've got your pilots, and then you've got your Navy SEALs, or however you want to describe it. All these different cells. Your neutrophils, these are the first responders. They are the white blood cells that are used to combat bacterial infections. And you've got more of these than pretty much anything else. Then you've got the lymphocytes. They are involved in the early stages of infection and also the late stages of infection. And what happens here is that, like, the longer that your body has been fighting an infection, your neutrophils will tend to go up, 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 and your lymphocytes will get more and more depleted. So I'll come back to that concept in just a second. Now, the monocytes, these are like the cleanup crew of the immune system. I call them the janitors. So they come out in force when you're recovering from an infection, or even like after you've had a surgery or you had some food poisoning or I don't know what, and you've got a lot of cleanup that needs to happen in the gut. So it makes sense. Like if we see the monocytes high, then I'll probably question you, like, what's been going on in the last couple weeks since you came in and did nutrition? Like, have you been sick? You know, what's been going on with your gut? Have you been feeling good? And if you said, "Oh yeah, I had a cold, I had COVID or whatever," then that makes sense. But if you say, "No, nothing's really happened," then I might think, "Oh, well then this might be more of a chronic problem, like chronic inflammation. Something has been aggravating your immune system or aggravating your gut environment for a long time." Looking at the eosinophils, they kind of go along with the monocytes when this chronic inflammation could be related to food sensitivities or maybe could be related to intestinal parasites. And this was the first immune marker I ever started learning about because back when I was trying to figure out all my problems, my eosinophils were 16. And so my doctors were like, they didn't know what to do with it. They said, well, it looks like you're having an allergic reaction to something. And they sent me to the allergist. And then the allergist didn't find anything wrong with me. So he sent me to the gastroenterologist. Well, because they never think about anything beyond that. They don't think about intestinal parasites. But eosinophils can often go high when you have intestinal parasites. So I like to ask people, like, what makes the most sense in your context? Because if we know eosinophils should be 3% or less, and that's normal, and you're like 10, 12, 15, something is provoking the immune system on a regular basis. It could be your food, could be something you're sick with. We need to figure this out. And so if you see this pattern, monocytes are high, eosinophils are high, and sometimes even the basophils will go high. I don't see it quite as common. The basophils, they indicate a histamine pattern. So it could be an allergy, it could be an infection, it could be parasites, but they're more involved in like the mast cell activation and production of hives, rashes, and stuff. If you see all three of those high, I'd say it's a really high possibility that you have parasites. But whenever I see an individual monocyte, eosinophil, or basophil, an individual marker high, I'll go through my whole list of questions. And, we see this a lot. I mean, I wrote an article on our website called "Do I Need a Parasite Cleanse?" Because I go through this list of questions all the time. Do you have acne on your face, on your chest, on your back? Do you have pimples on your butt? Do you have an itchy butt? Are you having energy changes around the full moon? Bloating, constipation? I mean, lots of different things are actually very common. So anyway, let's take a look at this, the absolute white blood cell counts. So looking at the same kinds of cells, but here we're looking at the absolute numbers of them. And you can look at the neutrophils divided by the lymphocytes. This is the NLR ratio.
Hey, Claire. Claire,
Yes, yes.
me okay?
What?
Yeah, the connection is a little bit off. Is everybody still there? Or are we all off?
I can still hear
I'm
everything.
still here.
Okay. So I just wanted to point out the NLR ratio I find to be useful because if your absolute neutrophils are, 8,000 and your absolute lymphocytes are 2,000, then that would be a ratio of 4. And any ratio that's greater than 2 makes me think chronic inflammation in the immune system. Whatever problem you're dealing with, it's been going on for a really long time. So that's where I see that as being helpful. And there are a couple of other of these ratios that we can look up. I've got,
Hey, Claire, hold on for a second. Claire, hold on, hold on. So, yeah, the recording's in process. I just want to make sure I lost you guys for a minute, so I apologize for that. We'll see you at the end of this how this comes out. But keep going. I don't know. Is everybody else? Can everybody hear each other? Everybody good?
Yeah, recording's still going. It's still good.
Okay, good. So you guys, I guess my internet went away. But anyway, keep going, Claire. Apologize.
all right. So we can edit this if we need
Yeah,
to.
if we have to. Yeah, no worries. Yep.
Okay, so the NLR is the most useful ratio when looking at the absolute numbers here. Okay, so that was, oh, I'm sorry. And there was one other thing, but I didn't see it. Oh, here we go. The immature granulocytes, you should always pretty much see those at 0 or close to 0. These are immature cells that should not be released prematurely from the bone marrow. You normally want to see it basically nothing. If you see some immature granulocytes coming out, that means the immune system is overtaxed and it's spitting out immature cells very quickly in a desperate attempt to keep up with the immune demands. Does that make sense? Like
Yeah.
normally the bone marrow should be doing its thing without being provoked, without doing things faster than it should. And when you see immature granulocytes, there's some kind of a process that's disturbing the normal speed of what should be happening. All right. So that was the CBC. So we didn't really talk about a lot that people come in asking questions about. Usually when people come in, they want to know why they can't lose weight. They want to know why they're tired. And maybe they're anemic, but that it's not that common. If you're not having heavy menstrual flow and I don't know. I feel like it's just not that common. People want to know why they feel the way they feel. So the CBC doesn't cover a lot. In addition to that, it is a momentary snapshot. It depends. Did you go out the night before? Have you been dehydrated because you're drinking too much coffee? And then you follow that up with wine every night and you're not drinking your water, you're not taking your electrolytes, or you're not putting your sea salt on your food. Were you
Stress.
sick? Were you stressed? Did you get in a car accident on the way to the lab? So this is why we always ask questions with people. It doesn't really include much to do with your hormones. It's not specific enough to know what's going on, with your thyroid function. Are you producing enough hormones? Are you converting your hormones? Or, are your adrenals spazzing out? Doesn't cover any of that. And so anyway, so these are reasons why oftentimes people will come in with basic labs and then I send them right back to the lab and I give them, some other thoughts so that we can go down some different rabbit holes. So now let's say we do see someone with a hemoglobin that's looking low, the red blood cells are looking low, and they're inflamed and their white blood cells are kind of low. Next question, I might say, well, are you iron deficient? And we like to look at iron and we like to look at ferritin. Okay. So when people are trying to understand this, I try to give this, I don't know if it's a metaphor or an analogy, but I want you to think about the money that you have in your wallet and the money that you have in the bank and think about your spending habits. You might have $10 in your wallet and you might be able to go out and buy lunch. But do you have money in your checking account? Do you have money in your savings account? How do you have this balance between the two? So Iron is like the circulating money that you're carrying around in your purse or your wallet. Your ferritin, which you're not going to know what that level is unless you test, it should be in a normal range if you have good reserves of iron that have been packed away in the liver. Sometimes your ferritin is very, very high, and that shows that the liver is missing something, or it's inflamed, or it's dealing with a problem and it's packing away too much iron. High ferritin can be very inflammatory. It's really bad for the body. It can lead to low energy and aches and pains. And when someone has high ferritin, we will often suggest donating blood. It's one of the reasons why we have these blood draws every quarter. If somebody's ferritin is very low, then we know maybe the person's not eating enough red meat, maybe they don't have enough hydrochloric acid, maybe they're missing the other nutritional cofactors. There's something that's preventing the liver from packing away a normal amount of iron. Maybe they have intestinal parasites.
Yeah, it could be
Parasites
digestion. Yep.
consume iron.
Yeah.
And so if somebody's anemic and we haven't figured out why, yet they're taking iron, they could just be feeding the parasites that might be the problem. So anyway, I want you to think about it like this, because iron is used in many different ways in the body. If you have plenty of money in your wallet and you don't have enough money in the bank, shopping is not going to be fun. Okay? You can buy a sandwich for lunch, but you're not going to be able to go buy the shoes you want and the new winter coat and all of your groceries, maybe. Like, in the back of your mind, there's a limit. So even though your iron level may be normal, if your ferritin is low, your body's going to be very frugal with using your available iron for hemoglobin production and for thyroid hormone production and for growing your fast-growing cells like your hair. What else would you say? It's just the body needs iron in lots of different places, and if you're not optimal, you're going to feel it in lots of different ways.
And like you said, there are other things that are taking that iron, but there's a balance in all those minerals anyway, too, right, Claire? It's not just we just need iron, or we just need zinc, or we just need copper, or we just need,
Yeah. Like
it's a
the iron itself may not be the limiting factor. It could be the zinc, the copper, the magnesium, the B12, all these different things that go into it. Because our diets are not really that great, our digestive systems are kind of damaged. We're all operating under a lot of stress.
Well, yeah, I agree. And it's not even the diets aren't even that great. The food sources, I mean, the soils are depleted. And where are we getting those minerals from? Those minerals are in the soils, right? So we should be getting them from the food that we're consuming. Well, those are all depleted. And when those are depleted, that's when you start to run into these. But then stress then also affects that digestion and absorbability of the nutrients too. So there's a lot of factors, and this is where we're not going to go too much into a nutritional consult in here. Today, we're just going over blood work and really understanding what and why we're measuring these things in the first place.
Yes. So here on the left-hand side, these are the top nutritional cofactors that go into iron absorption. We're actually missing one on this list. I would put vitamin A on here.
Yep.
So lots of different reasons why someone may not have, those levels optimized. Primarily stress. We burn through everything faster with stress. And so when I send people back to the lab to do another draw so that we can go down a few rabbit holes and figure out, well, where's the biggest area that we need to put your resources? What's causing this? Of course, we want to see A1C. Of course, we want to see fasting insulin. These two numbers play a lot into someone's ability to lose weight and how, like, the influence of carbohydrates on the body. Also, I like to see uric acid. Some people don't handle purines in meat very well, and some people are eating way too much high fructose corn syrup and they're just not really realizing it. And so uric acid is a sign that your kidneys are not happy, either with excess protein and very rich foods, or it could be fructose and high fructose corn syrup. Now, I've never really seen that anyone had, too much of a problem from eating strawberries and blueberries and bananas. Like, you're not going to wreck your health because of the fructose that's in fruit.
Well, they've done studies and said that you can't get diabetes by eating normal sugar. It has to be high fructose corn syrup or something along those lines.
Yeah, why? Because it comes in with natural fiber that God put in the food. So
Right.
that's nature's dessert. That's what we're supposed to eat. We're not supposed to be eating Pop-Tarts
Donuts.
and gummy bears and things that have high fructose corn syrup in there. Um, so there's that. I always like to check thyroid hormones. Like I said before, production of T4 is dependent on iron. And then I like to look at cortisol because everyone's been listening to social media and everyone's convinced that they have high cortisol. But I would say much more often I see low cortisol in a morning test. And, to me, that more signifies that they're like in the exhaustion phase where the adrenals probably were pumping out a lot of cortisol for a while, but then they sort of get fatigued where they just can't do it anymore. And then the person just feels really flat, tired, and yet they've got all this added weight from back when they were pumping out high cortisol. And then I like to look at homocysteine because this is an inflammatory marker that affects your blood vessels and can set you up for greater risk for higher cholesterol, cardiovascular disease, vascular problems like a higher risk of stroke, and also a higher risk of dementia. It is dependent on your folate and B12 levels, and also, what else plays into that? Choline, methionine, trimethylglycine. And doctors never run it, but it's so important. So you're somebody who's on a statin, their cholesterol could be high because their homocysteine is high. No one ever checked for it, and so no one's addressing the problem. So I also like to check people for C-reactive protein. That's a general inflammatory marker. And then, of course, ApoB and LP(a). So the ApoB, this is a cardiovascular inflammation marker that you actually do have some control over. Like you could modify your diet, your lifestyle, your exercise, get your inflammation down, and your ApoB should get better. So it's a different kind of measurement on your LDLs and how your inflammation is affecting them. The LPA is important, but you only need to check it once because it's really more dependent on your genetic susceptibility to cardiovascular disease. So that one is not as important to me. I don't really care what you're genetically susceptible to. I want to know what's in your control. Like, what can you take action on? And then if we have a baseline, you can make some changes and then we can recheck this in a few months and see how much it's gotten better. So those are the top things that I'll send people back to the lab for to go deeper than what they tend to walk in with.
No, I mean, yeah, like you said, there's so much to this. Is this the last slide, by the way?
I think
Yeah.
so.
Okay, so, and I think what we need to do, because we're going to go over the part two, like you said, with the cholesterol and
The
CMP.
metabolic panel. Mhm.
Yeah, I think what we want to do too with this in the future, I think maybe we can even put together, like, let's make a couple of slides that have kind of optimal ranges that they can kind of see, or maybe they can take a picture of this screen. We'll do that on the next one that goes over these things, and I think
The
that'll be
slides
neat.
had the optimal ranges.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like we could put a whole list of it, just kind of boom, all of them lined up, so they can just kind of take it, or we can create a handout for them that they can just kind of grab and they can quick check themselves. But the best thing though is to sit down with somebody who knows what they're talking about, Claire, and literally go, all right, where am I? What do I need to do? What other tests do I need to run? And the neat thing about it, they don't have to be expensive. I mean, shoot, look at all these other labs out there that are running this stuff. These other doctors that are running. What's one of the biggest ones that everybody's doing right now, Claire?
So everybody's doing function health.
Yeah, so Function Health, they give a huge discount. They're doing all these vitamins, they're doing all these labs, and then you're stuck with them to do months worth of nutrition, stuff like that. But nobody really is in front of you. I had a lady in just the other day going, I just love the fact that I can sit down with you, I can look at you, we can talk about what's going on, we spend time. It's powerful to really be able to be present with somebody instead of it just being a program. So I think we'll talk about this a little bit more. We'll give them a little bit more understanding about what uric acid, cortisol, the homocysteine, the numbers and the ranges. I think that this is awesome that we have it. Claire, great job on the information. Guys, did you learn something? Travis, you learned a little something today?
I wish they explained a lot of that like you just did in school, Claire.
Yeah. Because they
Thanks.
don't, right? They really don't. And this is what's so valuable about this. And I totally agree. And I think it's what's so awesome about having Claire in the practice to be able to help us with this type of stuff. So we'll leave it
Well,
up. Any,
I
any
just want
questions, you guys? Oh, Claire's got
one
a
sec.
question. Yeah.
You put in a plug for Function Health, but you didn't say that this is what we do for people all the time.
Oh, yeah, we totally do. Yeah, and then we sit down with them, right? And then we really go over it with them and really kind of and walk them through this stuff.
And
Um,
again, it's very affordable. It's very
yeah,
comparable to what they're finding elsewhere, if not better.
yeah, of course, right? And so, yeah, with this, I was just talking about it. People are out there doing all this stuff and just kind of getting information, but love it, love the idea. And Sam, Travis, you guys have any questions about this stuff or anything you want to go over? I know you guys get to work with Claire all the time, so it's kind of nice to have her. You can ask questions whenever you'd like. But yeah, I think we're good. I think we wrap this up, and then I think we go. The next one will be in 2 Tuesdays from now. We'll do this again, reevaluate all this, go over the other parts, and maybe we can put something together that maybe a handout or something like that that they can look at or print out for themselves to take a look. So,
Okay.
and then always reach out to us if you want to add more to this and understand more about it. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. Thank you, Bull. Thank you, everybody, for doing this. Claire, great job.
Great slide, Sam. Thank you.